What's up everyone? Today we're finally going to learn some navigation, and every website has some kind of navigation, and in this video we're going to incorporate different basic techniques for navigating within a page on our little website. I'll see you in a second. Alright, welcome back everyone. So in this video we're going to talk about navigation and links, and let's refresh our memory by looking at the MDN page. And if we take a look at the very top of the page where the navigation is, we can see that it has a bunch of different links. And let's talk about how we can actually represent this in our code. And the way that we're going to do it is by using the nav element. And what that navigation element does is it represents the section of the page that has links to other resources or other documents. So let's actually talk about how we can create those links. And the way that you create those links is by using an anchor element. And the way that you write it is by using the A tag. And let's talk about the structure of that anchor element. One thing that this element needs in order to become a link is the href attribute. So the href attribute is going to be the URL that this link points to. So let's actually go ahead and specify google.com. And by the way, I want to preface it by saying that this is not the way that you want to do it, but let's go ahead and refresh the page and see what happens. So notice nothing is actually changing on the page, and the reason for that is because we didn't provide any content for that link. So let's basically type in go to Google over here and refresh the page once again. So now we see that link. And if we hover it, the cursor actually becomes a pointer. So let's click on it. And notice that it says your file couldn't be accessed. So let's talk about why this is happening. And the reason why this is happening is because you need to provide the correct URL. And the way that you do it is by providing the schema or the protocol. And the one that we're going to be using is going to be that HTTPS. So now if we actually save it and refresh, click on the link, now it is actually linking us to that Google page. But notice how it navigates away from our page. If we click on that link again, right, we're losing our content. And now we need to go back by using these arrow buttons. What if we don't want this behavior? What if we want to click on the page and open it in a new tab? Well, for that, we actually need another attribute called target. And the value for that attribute is going to be underscore link. So now if we save the page, go back to the browser and refresh it and click on that Google link, what's going to happen is it actually going to open in a new tab. And this is exactly what we want when we navigate to external resource, because we don't want our user to be navigated away from our page. But it doesn't really make sense to include the Google link for us. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to close this tab and remove that link altogether. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to include links to different articles within our page. And the way that's going to work is by including different links that will navigate us or scroll to the right portion of the content once we click on them. So let's go ahead and create 3 links. And the first link is going to link us to HTML, then CSS, and JavaScript. Perfect. Let's go back to the page and refresh it. Perfect. Now we have these 3 links, but they don't really do anything. Instead, what we want them to do is to scroll to the right content on the page. It's also called skip navigation or skip nav. So let's see how we can actually achieve that. And the way that we're going to do it is by including the ID attribute. And remember that this ID attribute is going to identify the unique element on the page. And this particular article element is going to be unique because it describes the HTML. So let's give it ID of HTML. We're going to do the exact same thing for this article. This is going to have ID of CSS as well as JavaScript article. This is going to have an ID of JavaScript. Perfect. So now we have 3 IDs, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and they all belong to the respective articles. So now let's go back to our links, and over here, the way that we're gonna set up that skip navigation is by doing the following. Put that hashtag sign and then the name of the ID of the element that you want this link to scroll to. Let's save the page. Let's go back to the browser and refresh it. So now, if I click on that HTML, notice how it scrolls down to that HTML article, and now HTML article is all the way at the top. Once again, if we click on HTML, it scrolls down. Let's do the exact same thing for CSS and JavaScript. Oops, that should be hashtag. Save the file, go back to the page, refresh it, and now let's click on CSS. It works fine. Let's click on JavaScript, also works fine. So this is how you set up skip navigation. So now we have talked about how to link to external resources, how to link to different sections of the page. Now let's talk about how to link to other pages on our website. And in order to do that, what we're gonna do is we need to create other files. Let's go back to Explorer. Let's click Create New File, and let's create main.html. Now let's see if you remember the shortcut to create that boilerplate HTML code. And the shortcut for that is going to be exclamation mark, hit enter, and now we see that it's been created for us. Let's close Explorer real quick. So over here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna change the title of the page to be main navigation. And what this page is going to do is it's basically going to link to different pages on our website. So let's create our first link. And this first link is going to point to our HTML basics or web development basics. So let's go ahead and put web dev basics over here. Now let's talk about how we can actually link those two pages. Let's go back to the Explorer, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to rename that page to be basics HTML. So once again, rename your index.html to be basics.html. Hit enter. Perfect. So now let's talk about how we can link them together. And the way that you're actually going to do is by providing the name of that page. And notice how VS Code actually pre-fills it for us. So let's hit enter, save the file, open up the Explorer, right click on the main HTML and click on copy path. Now we can go ahead and paste that in our browser, hit enter, and see that we actually have created the link to the web dev basics. So now let's actually try and click on it. Perfect, and that works like a charm. Now let's go back to basics HTML. We're going to close the Explorer once again. And how about we create the link back to our page, to our main page. And here we're going to create the A tag, and we're going to provide the link back to main. So here we're going to specify main.html, and we're going to call it back to main. Perfect, let's go back, refresh, and let's click on this link. Perfect, now that works as intended, so we're basically going back and forth between these two pages. Another thing that I want to mention is what's going to happen if we're going to create another HTML file, but now we're going to actually create that inside of the separate directory. So let's create a directory and call it extra pages. And inside of that directory, we're going to create a new file called potato.html. Perfect. So once again, let's hit exclamation mark, hit enter. That's going to prefill it with some boilerplate code. Change the document to be potato. We want to keep it consistent. And now let's just create an h1 tag and say potato. Perfect. So now let's go back to main.html and let's close the Explorer over here. And what we're going to do here is we are going to create the linkage to that potato HTML. So we're going to create a link, but now what are we going to put inside of the href? Well, here's how we're going to do it. Notice that potato HTML is inside of the folder, that extra pages folder. And the basics HTML and main.html is on the same level. So this is exactly the reason why over here we specified basics.html and we didn't have to have anything extra. Well, for this link over here, in order to link to potato, we actually need to have some extra stuff before the name of the file. And the way that we're going to do it is by basically providing the relative path from main HTML to potato HTML. So let's go ahead and see how we're going to do it. So we're going to close the Explorer. We go back to our link on line 11, and here we're going to do the following. We're going to do dot slash, and notice that VS Code actually helps us with giving some options. So we're going to go with extra pages and potato.html. So let's save the file and let's see how it works. So basically, from the main, we entered the extra pages directory, and from that extra pages directory, we only have one file, potato.html, and this is the file that we chose. And this is basically, you might ask yourself, why do we have the dot slash here and not here? Well, you can actually include the dot slash over here, and that's going to be the exact same thing. Let's go back to our main HTML. We have the link over here, and refresh the page. Oh, one thing that we forgot is we actually forgot to specify go to potato over here. Let's refresh the page, and now we have that link. So if we click that link, we get that potato. So once again, if you want to specify the link to the file that's in some other directory, what you want to do is provide the relative path from the file. Now, let's set up the linkage back from potato.html to main.html. So we're going to go here, and we're going to create that A tag. And now, what do we need to put inside of the href? Well, once again, this is going to be the relative path from potato.html to the main.html. And the way that's going to work is a bit differently. In this case, we actually need to go up a directory, right? We need to go from extra pages outside to that HTML tutorial folder, and now we need to grab that main.html. Well, the way that we do it is by doing the // and then we can actually select that main.html. We're not going to go in depth of why we need the .. but basically think of the .. as stepping outside of the current folder, and the // is going inside of the particular folder. So now let's refresh the page and see if that works. Once again, I forgot to provide some content to the link, so it appears on the page. Go to main, let's refresh it, let's click on it, boom, and now the linkage is set up correctly. So that is going to be it for this video. In the next video, we're going to talk about inputs and forms and also labels. So stay tuned, and I'll see you later.